April always is a great sign for high school football because it's spring football practice. NFL, you've got the draft coming up. For college football, it's spring football practice. Hello, I'm Jimmy Trodglen, sports editor of the Leaf Chronicle and adjunct faculty here at Austin Peay, and welcome to Trodglen's Perspective. And joining us today to talk some spring football is Austin Peay head football coach Rick Christophel. Coach Christophel, thank you. This is, I think, our second or third time of sitting down and talking Austin Peay football. Coach, I'm always very fascinated when you go into a spring football practice and it's not like 15 straight days of practice.
Right.
You know, you kind of spread it out over a certain number of weeks. Kind of talk about what is the advantage and disadvantage of having that kind of format.
Well, the biggest advantage is, Jimmy, that you don't have, if you have some bang-ups and some injuries, you're not going day. And so guys will be able to recuperate and get back to practice. The biggest disadvantage, you only have 15 days. Yeah. And we've got to get those in the 29-day period of time. And the great thing about this spring is we had great weather.
Yeah.
And we went on Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, Sunday, which we had a lot of great benefits out of it, and we seemed to get by without many injuries and bang-ups, so it worked out well.
Now, I know that one of the things you guys do at the end of every season is you sit down, you watch game tape, you have an evaluation period, and look at what went well, what didn't, what you want to do when spring football practice begins. So really for you, spring football practice might have started back in November.
It did. You go back and evaluate, first of all, you evaluate your players, and then you evaluate your coaches, and you evaluate how you did, how you managed and how you coached, and what kind of improvements can you make from there. Where did you make mistakes? What do you not want to make those same mistakes again? And then you have to figure out where are we trying to fit the guys we're recruiting into our puzzle.
And you have a pretty good class coming in. I think 14, 15, somewhere in that number. How anxious are you to see those guys get here in August? Because obviously they're not here yet unless they're early enrollees, and I know Austin Peay doesn't get necessarily a lot of those. But do you kind of like, well, let's see if this guy coming in August is going to be our second, our first, third as far as depth chart? When you go into spring football practice, are you also thinking about those guys that will be here in August?
A little bit, Jimmy. The biggest thing about going into spring football practice, of course, you don't want to have any major injuries, which we didn't have, knock on wood. The second thing is you're trying to establish playmakers, different positions, fill in different holes that you lost, which we only lost 7 seniors last year, so that was good. The third thing about guys coming in, you'd like to sit here and say, we're going to redshirt every one of them, but we can't do that. There's probably going to be about 4 or 5 guys that are going to have to come in and step in and play. Some of them one or two may have to start, but the rest of them are going to fill in definitely in the backup role.
As Coach Christophel said, Austin Peay only had 7 seniors on this team that just finished up this past fall. Maya Smith, one of those guys who had an outstanding year here at Austin Peay, a Kenwood High graduate, and that secondary. Coach, I had a chance to watch Amias ever since he was quarterback at Kenwood High School and watched him over his duration here. When you talk about only having to replace 7, Amias alone, that's a big one to replace.
That's a big one to replace, and the good thing about it is we got all those guys back in the secondary again besides him. So there was some valuable playing time there, and I hope that Amias gets an opportunity to play somewhere to further his future. He's definitely working hard enough and has worked hard enough in the last season or two to get to that point. So hopefully we'll get to see him play somewhere else.
Now we mentioned, of course, Amias on offense. On defense, on offense, you also are watching one of the top running backs in this program's history graduate, and Ryan White. Obviously a guy that has probably approached about 3,000 career rushing yards. Again, a big tool that on your offense that you're having to replace.
It's a big hole. I mean, again, we got some guys that played last year, but we went into spring practice. Unfortunately, West Kitts only got to practice about 3 days and then got to play in the spring game and did well. He had fresh legs. But Ian Pemberton came on. Rico Williams from Northeast came in and did some really good things and still learned the offense. And Troy Turner from Fort Campbell unfortunately missed half the spring with an injury. So we're hoping to out of one of those 4 or 5 guys, and we got a guy Dontavius Brown who didn't practice because of knee surgery last season. So out of one of those 4 or 5 guys, we'll be able to find one, and we've got a really dynamic one coming in from St. George's and Omar Williams.
It's kind of interesting. We talk about Rico Williams from Northeast High School. 6 foot. What is he pushing now? About 245, 250?
You're being nice, Jimmy. I'd probably say he's about 255.
And it is muscle.
Yeah.
This guy is incredibly built and strong and fast. I mean, he is a multi-dimensional guy because of his capability of blocking, but also running up, and he is a hard guy to tackle.
He's a hard guy to tackle, and I'll tell you something else he can do, Jimmy. He can catch the football coming out of the backfield. You know, he was a basketball player on that basketball team last year at Northeast, and has great hand-eye coordination and has real soft hands. So we can throw the ball to him coming out of the backfield and, you know, hopefully gain 5 or 6 yards and see what happens with him.
And it's real interesting. You look at all those guys on the depth chart at running back. You go from Rico at 6 foot 255 to a guy that's about 5'4" and about 150.
Yeah, Ian Pemberton, and how exciting he was. He had a really good spring. I think he learned to run the football more north and south in the spring than anybody else did in our backfield. And the guy that we can't forget that I thought just had an outstanding spring was Cody Tucker, our fullback.
Yeah.
He has matured into a very good pro fullback, and he's got good hands and is come on blocking wise, and he can run pretty good too.
Coach, it's interesting when we talk about Austin Peay football, we're still talking about the infancy stages of scholarship football when Austin Peay brought scholarship football back. I know that one of the things that you and I have addressed and talked about a lot is how young this team has been the last 2 or 3 years. I know now, from your perspective, these guys are starting to become juniors and become seniors, and you're now seeing the work of 2 and 3 years of a 2 and 3 year project on these guys. So I know that you and your coaching staff got to be starting to reap the benefits of that.
It's a very astute observation, Jimmy. We feel like that we're doing it the right way, and we feel like we're building it from ground up. And we knew we were going to suffer a little bit we were going to get some wins because we're going to play hard and do some of the things right. But as you mature and get around with the guys around you, that's when you become better. And we'll have, like you said, 10 guys back on defense this year. But the most impressive thing is we'll probably have 9 or 10 back again the next year. Yeah. So we're getting that way every year. That makes a difference. And
when you look at the Jacksonville states of this conference and those other programs that have been Tennessee Tech and your friend Coach Brown over there, building depth. And you guys have been in a lot of games, but then and one of the things you always say, put yourself in a position to win in the fourth quarter. When your team gets fatigued and worn out because they've played so many snaps, now you've got that depth that you're going to be able to rely more on.
Exactly, and that's what you have to do, and that's the infancy stage. We're now where we've got more guys on scholarship. We had more bodies in spring practice. We'd lose a guy, and we'd have another guy step in. And now we're getting to the stage where we want to win the game in the fourth quarter instead of being in a position to win. We want to win the game in the fourth quarter.
When we come back with Austin Peay head football coach Rick Christophel here in just a moment. Coach Christophel made an addition to his coaching staff during the offseason, a name that I know a lot of people around Clarksville are quite familiar with. This is Jimmy Trodglen, and this is Trodglen's Perspective.
This is where Vincent got the chance to cross the pond so he could study universal healthcare in London, where Chris conducted amphibian research that helped him land a research assistantship tracking threatened toads through Yosemite National Park, where Claire studied breast cancer cells and built the resume required to earn a genetics research internship at Germany's internationally renowned Max Planck Institute. This is Austin Peay State University. More opportunities here, more opportunities out there. You'll find Austin Peay situated in the heart of Clarksville, Tennessee. But our reach goes far beyond our main campus. From our programs in Dixon and Springfield, to our satellite campus at Fort Campbell, to online programs students can complete from anywhere in the world, we're committed to providing higher education to every career shifter, ladder climber, military service member, graduate student, and traditional college student who desires the opportunity. Austin Peay State University. More opportunities here, more opportunities out there.
Back here at Austin Peay. Hi, I'm Jimmy Trodglen, sports editor of the Leaf Chronicle and adjunct faculty here at Austin Peay, and this is Trodglen's Perspective. Joining us today, Austin Peay head football coach Rick Christophel. Coach, we were talking before the break, talking about some of those areas where you're bringing back depth, and it's kind of a nice thing finally for Austin Peay to see, and an understatement. One interesting change to your coaching staff during the offseason is the hiring of a new offensive line coach. A name that a lot of people around here know because his father coached here a number of years back when Austin Peay was still scholarship football, Coach Palermo. Talk about the addition of the younger Coach Palermo to your staff.
Well, it's a good one. And his dad and I coached together back in '79 when we were here the first time. And then John came back in '89 as the head coach. Jason is, he played, started at Wisconsin at center and guard for 2 years. Is very knowledgeable in the game, is very energetic, and is going to bring a certain kind of toughness that we need up front. And I think the biggest part about him is he's already created a great rapport with his players, and that's what we need. We need more guys in this business that can create rapports with the players and not just be here, hit and miss 1 or 2 years and they're gone. I think the players respect that and they'll play harder for you.
And it's interesting, not just rapport with the players, but rapport with the coaching staff. The other 7, 8 of you guys all trying to develop that continuity to understand what your players are doing, what your schemes are. I mean, so it goes beyond not just his rapport with the players, but with you and the rest of the staff.
He fit right in, great chemistry. He's married and has he's married to his wife's name's Caitlin. He's got a little girl named Giabella, and that's exciting, to bring his family into the staff. And but you're right, the chemistry of our staff, which I'm a big believer in, he fit right in. The great thing about it is Wisconsin's running game and our running game is very similar in a lot of philosophy, not terminology, but a lot of philosophy, and certainly not bodies. But he is fit right in. The terminology was the hardest part for him, but he knew our philosophy right off the bat.
And it's interesting that Tennessee coach Derek Dooley brought his dad out of retirement and is now in Tennessee. So got 2 Palermos at 2 universities coaching here inside the state. The offensive line, I know that's probably an area you guys really put a lot of emphasis on, because if that running game's going to work, it obviously starts up front.
It does, and we've got to fill 3. We lost 3 starters in James Barker and J.P. Washington and Tim Schmidt, and Tim Schmidt's been center for us for 3 years. So that's the tough part that we got to fill. The great thing is that we've had guys that have played, and it's not like there's a bunch of guys that are going to fall in that they're just getting into the game for the first time. The other good thing is we've got 13 or 14 offensive linemen now that are on our program or on our roster, and we're building that depth. You talk about depth, that's where you got to build depth. I think you build depth first on the interior on both sides of the ball in the line of scrimmage.
When you look at this offensive line, outside of the loss of the 3 seniors that you had mentioned, again, this is a line that's got a lot of experience at 2 and 3 as far as going that far deep into the depth chart. Can you tell, since the hunger in those guys, that they understand that this have been a process of building a program and they kind of ready to take it on themselves?
Especially in the younger offensive linemen. Jacob Langston, of course, has been here. He's the only senior we got in the offensive line again next year. And we moved a couple guys, moved Matt Wise and Isaiah Tuiasosopo from defensive line to offensive line, and it gives them a chance to play and do some things. But Ben Stansfield and Gavin Wilson and Chris Hartman and Nathan Sanders, those guys got to step up and play. Kyle Harrison got to step up and play and do those sort of things. But again, we've got guys like Julian Virgo and Melvin McDaniel that didn't play last year. We redshirted them, which is good.
One benefit Austin Peay does have is the return of a quarterback who's got a lot of experience. And Coach, I know this is kind of those odd things that happen sometimes, but with the return of Jake Ryan, and Jake has been there, he's developed, you can sense the leadership role kind of he's taking that on. But it's interesting and it's unusual that you have yet to be able to go through a whole season without one of your quarterbacks getting injured and missing time.
In 5 years, we've had a quarterback injured every year, Jimmy, and hopefully we can keep him healthy enough and get through the season and do those things. But I'm looking across the country, and that's the teams that are winning championships. Most of the time, their quarterback stays intact, and most of their players stays intact. And if you can do that, you're going to have a chance to win a lot of football games.
And talk about the development of Jake and what you saw in him this spring.
The biggest thing is he's learned the offense. He's become more mature. He wants to handle more, which I think he can. The players around him, and he knows. I think he understanding the system and what we got to do, and taking shots when he knows to take shots. We got to continue to work on a couple of things and take care of the ball. But I believe if he comes back with the right frame of mind next year, I think Jay's going to have a great year.
And one benefit, of course, is he's got his core receivers back.
Yeah, Devin Stark is outstanding, and that's a good one to have back. And on the other side, we've got Daryl Clack, who played, and then Jamar Emery, again another Northeast product. And then the inside, we've got Terrence Oliver, and we moved Robert Lemon inside, and Tyler Clendenin. All those guys are back, and Hunter Branch has come on. And I tell you that it was fun to watch our tight ends this spring. Our tight ends got a little bit better. Preston Rouse and Ashlon Adams and Xavier Norman, especially the two front guys. They're seniors, and they should be, but they caught the ball better and did some things better.
I know when you went back in the fall and was looking at the season as a whole, breaking down what went well and what didn't, the one obvious thing that we unfortunately had to talk about a lot were turnovers. Right. Turnovers at bad opportunity. Well, there's never a good time for a turnover, but it seemed like the UT Martin game where you're right there in it, and then there's a stretch of 3 turnovers in a row, and I know that had to have been a point of emphasis all through those 15 practice dates.
We have to take care of the ball, and we have to win the turnover ratio. If we're going to win football games, we have to win the turnover ratio. And but you're right, the UT Martin game, we had 3 right in a row. I think we had 4 or 5 in the UT Martin game, and I think we had 7 in the Jacksonville State game. So we had 12 turnovers in 2 games where we didn't play very good. And then you take those 2 games out of it, and of course Jake got hurt, but we don't turn the ball over at Southeast Missouri but one time, Eastern Illinois. We're sitting there, we got opportunities to win a football game, and I believe that's the most important thing.
And for a coach, is it more frustrating to know, boy, we are almost there, or to look back and say, if we hadn't had those turnovers, there's 2 or 3 more wins sitting there?
I think it's more frustrating because we're almost there. And the turnovers we'll take care of. You can harp on them. It's just taking care of the ball. But the frustrating part is that we're close, and we just got to get over the brink.
When we come back with Coach Christophel here in just a couple of moments, we'll talk about the upcoming season, an incredible way to start the season, to say the least. Also, there's a new football stadium on the horizon, hopefully just a couple years away, and we'll talk about that when we come back with Austin Peay football coach Rick Christophel.
You can only learn so much from listening to lecture. That's why our professors invite students to work with them outside the classroom. From finding solutions to biofuel problems that limit green energy potential, to developing a mobile app that lets first responders use cell phones to document the damage of disasters, to curating art shows with world-class creatives who share their New York know-how in the classroom and in the Big Apple. Our students enjoy the kinds of opportunities here that lead to more opportunities out there. Austin Peay State University.
Back here at Austin Peay, I'm Jimmy Trodglen, sports editor of the Leaf Chronicle and adjunct faculty here at Austin Peay, and this is Trodglen's Perspective, talking with Austin Peay head football coach Rick Christophel today. Coach, we've talked about spring football practice. This kind of look ahead to this fall. Something we've talked about a lot, and you're not alone in this situation, and what we now call money games, right, that not only funds football but the overall athletic program. And I can't imagine any school at your level having a more daunting challenge ahead, a Western Kentucky, a Virginia Tech.
Well, Western Kentucky, when we scheduled Western Kentucky, they were back and forth, and Coach Tager's done a great job. I believe after the Indiana State game last year, I think they won 6 out of their next 7 games, and been watching them on film and off and on, and they play really good defense. They're sound on offense. He's just put it all together, and that's the most important thing. And then I don't have to say anything about second team. I mean, we're going to go up there, and Frank Beamer, I've known Frank a long time. I know Bud, their defensive coordinator, for a long time, and we're going to go up there and do the best we can against those guys, and we're going to fight them tooth and nail, because you never know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
So.
And obviously, Virginia Tech has a quarterback that's the size of most offensive linemen.
I was hoping that he might go out in the draft, but The good thing is they lost a couple offensive linemen. I think they lost 4 or 5 offensive linemen, and the running back is going in the draft. But that guy back there is big. You know, the one good thing, Jimmy, before they play us, they got to play Georgia Tech.
Yeah.
So that helps us physically a little bit. The bad thing is we got to play Western Kentucky before we play them. So, and then you get, I don't get to go past the 3rd game, and then we've got to play Tennessee State, who is really a physical football team. So, hopefully we can come out of those first 2 games healthy, and then line up and play the first OVC game.
Now, one thing that I think is very obvious to anybody that's followed Austin Peay, anyone that's been on this campus, is see all this development and all this growth and all these construction projects everywhere. And this university is growing by leaps and bounds, as they say. One site that hasn't been touched has been Governor Stadium. However, we're maybe a couple years away now from seeing a renovated Governor Stadium. That stadium is pretty much what it looked like back when it was built around 1945 to 1950, whatever that time frame was.
Right.
Really hasn't changed much. Nope. Excuse me. We talk about when you go out and recruit, facilities are such a big part of that recruiting tool. Now, when you talk to prospective players, juniors and seniors in high school, now you can say, hey, look, we've got a renovated stadium on the way.
We do, and that was big in the recruiting process this year. And you're exactly right. Recruiting has become facility-based. They did a survey, and 75% of all decisions are made on facilities alone right now. And we've had a couple kids that look at our website and won't visit because of our facilities, and that's just the bottom line truth. And the stadium is about 70 years old, and hopefully we get all the renovations done and everything, and it'll look nice, and we'll have an upper hand on at least a lot of the kids in this area where we can get them on campus and see what we have. But I think it's a multi-purpose thing, Jimmy. It eliminates a lot of space problems in the Dunn Center, and it's going to be an appealing thing for students that aren't even athletes to come in and see a brand new stadium and see the things that we're trying to do across the campus. Like you said, all the capital projects are being done, but that being one of them.
Of course, we're seeing the new dorms built. We've got a new computer science and math building that they're going to start building here with, I think, this fall.
Right.
So Governor Stadium, it's a project that I know that President Hall wanted to take on ever since he came into his position, and finally him getting an opportunity to see this come to fruition. So I know even the support up front in the administration.
It makes a big difference when you got that kind of support, and they can step out and say some things and do some things without us having to put our face on it and all those things. Because really, when it boils down to it, it's a university project. It's not a football program project or athletic department project. It is a university project, and it needs to be viewed that way.
When you played, did you ever think that facilities would have such a determining factor on where somebody? Did you ever imagine that it would come to that?
Well, we've changed so much. It's the technology, the media, everything has changed what we're doing in our business. And I tell our young coaches all the time, I'm glad I only got about 4 or 5 years left because it's one of those things where it's just like Twittering and Facebooking and doing all those things. You better be careful how you do things and what you do, because all those things might come true. And a lot of it's good, but some of it's not so good. And that's the things that we got to watch for. And as far as facilities, it was just a time coming that if you're going to compete and stay up with everybody else, your facilities got to be just as good as theirs.
Now, when we tape this today, we're only talking April 12th. Spring football is finished. Fall seems so far away, except when you are a college football coach.
That's right. That's right. We don't get much of a break, Jimmy. I can tell you that right now.
Well, how do you begin prepping? I mean, you've mentioned looking at Western Kentucky tape. You know a lot about Virginia Tech. You know Coach Beamer from professionally for years, and TSU. And I mean, at what point do you really start seriously putting together schemes and start working on game plans? And so when does that all begin?
We'll start in June.
We'll
go. We got 2 weeks of recruiting in May, and then we'll finish out first. We'll finish out our spring semester with our players, make sure that they get everything that they're supposed to do done, and then we'll go recruiting. We'll come back and put all our recruiting board together. Then we'll take the first 2 weeks of June and start doing preps on. We'll do Western Kentucky, Virginia Tech, and in a simple game plan on Tennessee State. and then we got camps, and then we'll take a little bit of vacation. And then when we get back here, it's July 14th, we go head over heels for about 3 weeks until they get back in. And
so players should get here.
Yeah.
Coach, do you have an opportunity to interact any with your players in the summer? Is there an NCAA rule that says communication's either limited or can you talk to your guys? Hey,
yeah.
How are you doing? And
yeah, we can talk to them as much as we want to. The thing we can't do with them is we can't do any physical interaction with them as far as in the weight room, on the field, or anything like that. We cannot do any of that. So it's all strength, coach.
But you can talk
yes.
schemes. You can talk about Western Kentucky.
We can talk about Western Kentucky. You can't get into a lot of scheme part about it. You can't do any of that. But you can talk about preparation, how you're going to do it, and what you're going to do, and you can talk about some academics. But the NCAA will not let us do anything further than that.
You talked about recruiting just a few moments ago. You've been in this profession several years.
36 or 37.
36 or 37 now. Do you still have that desire and a passion? Do you still love getting out there on the road and meeting high school coaches and sitting down with parents and the kids? That's still kind of in your blood, still drives you?
Believe it or not, I don't like to be on the road as much as I used to be, as far as 2 and 3 weeks at a time. But being able to get out of the office and see the players, talk to the coaches, but the most important part is getting in their homes and meet their family.
Yeah.
Make sure that they understand what we're about and what kind of program we're going to come into and how we're going to treat their students, their student athletes, and their sons, and do those sort of things. If we can get that across in the recruiting process, we felt like we've done a pretty good job.
It's interesting when we talk about recruiting. You have dipped into a talent pool at Northeast that's been very impressive over the last few years. Mm-hmm. One player we did not mention is J.J. Rutledge, who had originally had committed to one of the military academies. Now back here at Austin Peay, we had mentioned Troy Turner, running back at Fort Campbell, was part of Fort Campbell's 3 straight state championship runs, and was an all-state player in Kentucky. You're getting, and we can't mention, I mean, you've had a ton of kids from Clarksville High. You really are starting to be able to get an opportunity to keep some of these elite players here in Clarksville, here on campus.
That's the most important thing, Jimmy. We talked about this, 5 years ago when I first came here. What we want to do is we don't want to build a fence around this area, but we want to make doggone sure that we get the opportunity to recruit them. And it's very, very important to do that. And the recruiting plateau has changed a lot. A lot of kids, a lot of student athletes, they don't want to go that far away from home anymore. They want to go where their folks and their family can see them play, and be more available to all the people that saw them play when they were growing up. And I believe that's a big feather in our hat that we can do that, and especially as long as football keeps growing in this area.
And there's more talent at Northeast.
Oh, I know.
Wow.
Well, we were the first one to offer the other guy, so I can't say his name.
Yes, I know exactly what you're talking about. But it's exciting, seriously, to see high school football here continue to develop. Montgomery Central here recently made a great coaching hire in Jeff Tomlinson, who I think is going to do a great job when he gets situated at Central. There's a lot of talent in this city that may not be outside of maybe a couple that are not in SEC, but they fit in nicely and fit in well with an OVC type program.
They do, and that's the kind of guys we're looking for. And then, of course, Jimmy, there's some of them that walk on that get a name for themselves.
Yes.
And our starting strong safety right now was Defensive Player of the Week twice last year in the OVC, and he walked on, Antoine Majors, and I wouldn't give $150,000 for him, for him, because he goes out in the field, he does his job, he works hard, he's great off the field, he's a leader for us, and those kind of guys. And we signed another one late, as you know, from Clarksville Academy. That's we had him in camp and knew a lot about him, and painstakingly, really, it could be that we made a mistake or whatever, but at least we did get him and we signed him.
Absolutely. Coach Christophel, it's always an honor, my friend. Thank you very much. Austin Peay head football coach Rick Christophel. I'm Jimmy Trodglen, and as always, thank you for joining us, and we'll talk to you next week. Have a good week. Thank you, Coach.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Have a good